I understand the complexities.
We'll need to adjust our timelines.
Hey, I've been trying to reach you. Listen, about that meeting.
It really depends on what kind of business you're in.
Yeah, for me, I have to be more hands-on.
Yeah, I'm on my way now. I should be there in about 10 minutes.
I'm thinking about making a big career change.
It's clear that the current approach isn't yielding the results we anticipated. We need to explore new strategies.
I agree, the data supports that. I've been considering a few alternatives we could discuss.
The early morning sun filtered softly through the mist as Hung stood at the edge of the construction site, clipboard in hand, boots dusted with fine gravel. The air was quiet but tense, a kind of hush that settled when too many deadlines hung in the air. The new road segment had only just been stabilized after the last rain, and though it held for now, a part of Hung's mind couldn't shake the memory of the landslide last year that buried the lower slope in silence and stone. As he surveyed the worksite, his phone buzzed. It was a call from the office. They wanted to finalize the TET bonus plan today. He sighed, slipped the clipboard under his arm, and headed to the truck. Back at the office, two managers were already in heated conversation. Papers spread out on the meeting table like discarded leaves. One of them, the younger one, suggested gift baskets, tea, fruit, biscuits. The older one shook his head and said firmly, "No, cash. Always cash. It's more useful for families during Tet." Hung walked in mid-discussion and agreed. Practicality beats tradition this year. They need money, not things they can't eat or trade. Numbers were discussed. Fairness weighed. A tiered bonus was approved. 5 million dong for workers in the warehouse. 10 million for those out in the field. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Hung signed the papers and left the office with a weight lifted off his shoulders, only to find another waiting in its place. His sister had messaged. Their father was angry again, furious about Hung's relationship with Ka. Why her? He had asked weeks ago, and no answer ever seemed to satisfy him. He wanted a woman from a wealthier family, someone with connections, someone who could match their name. But Ka was different. She was fire and tenderness, resilience and warmth. A woman who walked to the market before dawn, who tended her daughter's fever through the night, who once stood in the rain for hours because she refused to abandon a broken chicken coop mid-flood. She wasn't society's ideal, but to Hung, she was irreplaceable. He replied to his sister's message with a simple, "I'll handle it." That afternoon, he drove to one of the remote construction sites, where cracked roads clung to cliff sides like tired arms. They had to plan ahead for post-Tet repairs. Landslides were inevitable, and each year they swallowed a few more meters of road, and occasionally a house. His team was waiting, blueprints in hand, hopeful eyes searching his face for decisions. He gave instructions, made site visits, adjusted schedules so workers could leave 2 days early for the holiday. "We work to live," he reminded them. Tet is for family. As evening approached, he made a detour. It wasn't scheduled, but it was needed. Ka's home was small, but alive. Light glowed from inside. Soft chicken clucks echoed from the yard, and a familiar voice laughed in the distance. Her daughter, free-spirited and bright-eyed. Ka opened the door, surprised but not unwelcoming. She wore her usual apron stained with flour, hands still warm from chopping vegetables. "You came without calling," she teased. "I needed to see you," he said. Her eyes softened. They sat outside, the little girl crawling into Hung's lap, telling him about a dream she had. A dream with flying dogs and talking mango trees. Sia smiled quietly as he listened. After the child was tucked into bed, they sat in the kitchen. Ka's expression changed. My ex came by last week, she said. Hung froze. He tried to take her. Said he missed his daughter. I told him to leave. The security men saw and escorted him away. Hung's jaw clenched. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's over now, she replied. And because I know you're carrying too much already. He took her hand gently, rubbing the back of her knuckles with his thumb. Don't ever think you're a burden. You're my reason. She looked at him, eyes glassy with unspoken pain. And in that moment, the air between them shifted, not into something new, but something deeper. Days passed. The company's year-end meetings consumed Hung. Plans were reviewed, budgets finalized, and supplies for the spring season ordered. He barely slept. When he did, it was in short bursts, moments stolen between phone calls and spreadsheets. Yet each evening, no matter how late, he called Ka. Some nights they spoke for minutes. Others, they sat in silence, simply listening to the hum of the world around them. One night, Ka sounded distant. Are you okay? He asked. Just tired, she said. The chickens are sick. I've been up feeding them warm mash. He wanted to drive over immediately, but she insisted it wasn't serious. It's just life, she said. Messy and loud and exhausting. He laughed. Sounds like mine. At the end of the week, he visited again. This time, he brought medicine for the chickens, snacks for the little girl, and a scarf for Ka. She raised an eyebrow. You bought me something? Don't get used to it, he teased. But yes, it's cold. She smiled, softer this time. I'll treasure it. He stayed the night, not in the way gossips would suspect, but simply sleeping on the floor, a blanket over his shoulders, the little girl curled near him like a kitten. In the middle of the night, he woke to see Ka, seated by the window, humming softly, her face illuminated by moonlight. She didn't notice him watching. He didn't say a word. Back in the city, Tet's shopping chaos had begun. Hung hated crowds, but he braved the market for Ka's favorite dried persimmons and a toy robot for her daughter. He also bought a book about chicken care, scribbling a note on the first page. For the real boss of the coop. He wrapped it simply. No ribbon, just intention. At the company warehouse, workers began receiving their bonuses. Hung stood quietly in the corner as they opened envelopes and smiled. Some hugged each other. Some cried. It wasn't much, but it meant something. The site foreman approached him. This year was hard, he said, but you didn't forget us. Hung shook his hand. I never will. On the last working day before the holiday, Hung drove again to Ka's home. This time, she wasn't outside. He knocked. The door opened slowly. Her face was pale, her voice low. I was about to call you. What happened? I think I need to go to the clinic. Her hands trembled. He rushed her inside, sat her down, checked her pulse. She wasn't bleeding, just faint, dizzy. Her daughter watched from the doorway, eyes wide. Hung scooped Ka into his arms and carried her to the car, whispering soft reassurances. The clinic was quiet. The doctor examined her, ordered tests, and spoke privately to Hung later. She's fine, but she's under strain. You should know. She's pregnant. Hung stood still. What? She didn't know. It's early, but the situation is complex. Her body's been through a lot. The words rang in his ears. Pregnant, not his. And yet, his heart didn't feel betrayal, only fear. Fear for her, for the child, for what this meant. Siya sat in the small white room, eyes downcast. I didn't plan this, she said softly. It happened before us, before everything. He sat beside her. I know. If you want to leave, don't. She looked up, startled. I'm not going anywhere. She cried then, for the first time in front of him. Not because of shame, but because something broke. Something that had held tight for too long. When they returned home, the sky was already filled with red lanterns. Tet was upon them. But something deeper had begun too. Not just a new year, but a new chapter. One filled with choices, with uncertainty, but also with a kind of quiet, stubborn love that had already withstood storms. As Hung unpacked the groceries and medicine, as Ka settled onto the sofa with a blanket, as her daughter played with the robot in the next room, they all moved not as broken pieces, but as a strange, fragile, forming whole. The world outside roared with fireworks and noise. But inside their small home, 3 hearts beat in an unspoken rhythm of belonging, of waiting, of something like family. Tet arrived not with the thunder of drums or the crackle of firecrackers, but with the quiet rustle of morning wind and the soft clatter of chopsticks against ceramic bowls. Hung stayed longer that morning, seated across from Ka as she poured hot tea, her movements slow, almost hesitant, as if each motion carried the weight of unspoken questions. The child, her daughter, sat between them, cheerfully munching on sticky rice, oblivious to the tension swirling between the adults. Hung watched Ka closely, memorizing the slight tremble in her fingers, the quiet set of her jaw, the way she avoided his gaze. "I should get groceries later," she said quietly. "We ran out of dried mushrooms." Hung replied, "I'll go." She shook her head. "No, you've done enough." "Not yet," he said softly. "Not nearly enough." He knew the pregnancy changed things. Not the way he felt about her, but the way the world would see her, judge them both. The whispers, the sideways glances, the questions behind polite smiles, they would come. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to step away. That afternoon, Hung visited his parents. His father was, as expected, cold. A short nod when he entered the room. A long silence before his father finally said, "You're still with her?" "Yes," Hung replied. "Even now?" "Especially now." His father's jaw tightened. "You think this is strength? Staying with a woman carrying another man's child?" "I think this is love," Hung said. "And I won't explain it anymore." His mother, who had remained silent, quietly placed a plate of fruit before him. She touched his shoulder as she passed, a brief, barely perceptible gesture. But in that moment, it was enough. When he returned to Ka's house that evening, she was sitting alone in the courtyard, her feet tucked beneath her, a shawl draped over her shoulders. The child was asleep inside. Ka looked up when he approached, her expression unreadable. "They won't accept us," she said before he even sat down. "Your family, your world. Then we make our own." He answered, "I don't want you to sacrifice everything." "I'm not," he said. "I'm choosing something better." She turned her face away, and he could see the tension in her neck. "And what if one day you change your mind? When it's hard, when people talk, when your father makes you choose?" He knelt beside her, took her hand. "Then we face it together. And if I ever waver, remind me of this moment, right now, when I was more certain than I've ever been." She said nothing, but he felt the slight squeeze of her fingers around his. The days that followed were filled with the odd normalcy that comes with shared routine. Hung fixed a leaking pipe behind the house. CA pickled radish and boiled peanuts for the market. The little girl helped dust the shelves, occasionally stopping to ask her mother when the baby would come, if it would be a boy or girl, if she could name it. "Let's wait until it's real," Ka always said. "It is real." The child insisted one evening, her small palm pressed gently to her mother's belly. "I can feel it." Hung watched from the doorway, heart aching with a kind of joy too fragile to touch. He had started coming to the house every night now, sleeping on the floor, waking to the scent of lemongrass and wood smoke. He helped her cook, shopped with her at the market, greeted neighbors with a quiet nod, Some smiled back. Others didn't. Word had spread that she was pregnant, that it wasn't his, that he stayed anyway. There were whispers. He heard them sometimes, at the market, at the site, even among his own staff. But he never responded. He didn't need to. The truth was in the life they were building. One evening, Ka sat him down. The doctor said we'll need to monitor things more closely. I might need to rest more. I'm a little older now. And the stress. He said it might complicate things. Hung nodded. Then we'll adjust. I'll ask my assistant to handle more of the road work. I can work remotely a few days a week. You don't have to do all that. I want to. But the world didn't always bend to intention. A storm hit the construction zone 2 days later, washing out a newly built slope. Workers were injured, supplies delayed. Hung had to leave, just for a few days. He promised. CA didn't argue, but he saw the flicker of worry in her eyes. The morning he left, he kissed her forehead, crouched to hug the little girl, and said, "I'll be back before the weekend." She nodded. "We'll be here." But while he was gone, everything changed. Sia began feeling dizzy again, more than usual. The nausea was stronger, the fatigue deeper. She fainted once, briefly, while tending to the chickens. The neighbors found her, helped her inside, gave her sweet tea, and called a doctor. By the time Hung returned, she was in bed, her face pale, her eyes dull. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked. She tried to smile. "You had enough to worry about." He sat beside her all night, wiping her forehead, feeding her spoonfuls of broth. The next morning, he took her to the hospital in the city. They ran tests, waited hours. Finally, a young doctor sat them down. "The baby is okay, for now," he said, "but her blood pressure is unstable. And the exhaustion, this isn't just pregnancy. It's from years of strain, malnutrition, emotional stress. She needs rest, real rest." They kept her overnight. Hung stayed by her side. Her daughter stayed with a trusted neighbor, too young to understand, but old enough to know something was wrong. In the quiet moments of the hospital room, Hung read to Ka, children's stories, newspapers, herbal recipes, anything to keep the silence from settling too heavily. She would doze off mid-sentence, her hand curled around his wrist. He found himself praying, not loudly, not desperately, but with the quiet sincerity of a man who had finally found something worth holding on to. When they returned home, he rearranged everything, moved her bedroom closer to the kitchen, bought a rocking chair, installed a water filter, built a shaded space in the yard so she could sit and watch the chickens without standing too long. His mother came one afternoon. Unexpectedly, Ta was asleep, and Hung sat outside peeling pomelos. His mother sat beside him. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, quietly, "You love her very much." He nodded. "I do." "And the child? It doesn't matter whose blood it carries. It will be mine." She nodded again, more slowly this time. "Your father won't understand." "Then he doesn't have to." She reached into her bag and handed him a small container. "Soup for her, boiled pear with ginger. It helps with nausea." He looked at her surprised. "I didn't say anything to him," she added, "but I'll help where I can." The days passed slowly. The pregnancy progressed. Ka smiled more now, tired but content. She began writing in a small notebook, lists of names, baby clothes to buy, things to prepare. Hung watched her, marveling at the softness of her focus. One evening, as they watched the sunset, she said, "Do you ever think this could all go away?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember I would find you again, no matter what." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Promise me something, anything. If something happens, to me, Promise me you'll raise her child like your own." He turned, eyes fierce. "Nothing will happen to you. Just promise." He took her hand, placed it over his heart. "I already have." And in that moment, beneath a sky turning orange and violet, they didn't speak of fear or doubt again. The world outside continued. Projects resumed. The market bustled. Neighbors talked. But inside their small home, something quiet and beautiful bloomed. A family, not built on perfection, but on choice, on staying, on loving what the world deemed complicated. They weren't waiting for approval. They were living. And that was enough. The wind that morning was softer than usual, carrying with it the first scent of early spring and a gentle promise that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be all right. Siyi sat outside on a low wooden stool, a thick blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her belly noticeably larger now, her hands resting gently upon it. She watched the chickens peck lazily at the soil, and for the first time in weeks, there was a hint of color in her cheeks. Hung stood by the doorway, sipping tea and watching her with a kind of reverence he never thought himself capable of. The road they had traveled together had been long, littered with judgment, doubts, and lingering ghosts of the past. But they had walked it anyway, chosen it, together. That day, they were expecting a visitor. The local health nurse, someone Hung had arranged to stop by weekly, just to make sure everything was fine. Siyi appreciated it, even if she never admitted it aloud. She had grown used to his silent ways of caring. The soup he left, warming on the stove when she napped too long. The tiny bundles of herbs he brought back from business trips. The way he listened to her daughter's endless stories, as if they were the most important news in the world. Her daughter now called him Uncle Hung, not because they told her to, but because one day she had simply looked up from her drawing and said, "Uncle Hung, do you think the baby will like strawberries?" And that was that. He didn't correct her. He didn't need to. Time had done its work. When the nurse arrived, they all sat together inside, going over the usual things. Blood pressure, fetal position, rest routines. Siyi nodded along, asking questions, her voice more confident than before. Hung sat beside her, taking mental notes, asking a few questions of his own. The nurse smiled at the end of the visit. "You're lucky," she said. "Many women don't have this kind of support." Hung didn't say anything, but the quiet look he gave Ka said everything. Later that evening, as the sun began its slow descent behind the hills, they walked through the garden. Ka held his hand lightly, careful with her steps. She pointed to where she wanted to plant mint, maybe after the baby was born. Hung nodded, made a mental note to prepare the soil. "Do you think they'll come?" she asked suddenly. "Your parents?" Hung took a moment. "Maybe my mother, my father. Probably not." "I think your mother already has," Sa said with a soft smile. Hung raised an eyebrow. "She came by last week, brought me a scarf, said it would keep the wind away." "And you didn't tell me?" "She asked me not to." "Sneaky," he murmured, but he smiled. Days passed. Then, weeks. The belly grew, and so did the love in the little home tucked away between fields and winding paths. Hung still worked, of course. He managed 2 projects from a distance now, using video calls and relying on trusted deputies. But every evening, without fail, he came home. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes with fresh flowers, once with a small stuffed elephant that he swore the baby would love. Siyi teased him for it. "It doesn't even make noise," she laughed. "Not all love needs to be loud," he replied. One evening, she woke him in the middle of the night, not with panic, but with quiet urgency. "It's time," she whispered. And it was. The hours that followed were a blur of motion. The nurse came, then a midwife. The neighbors hovered near, offering help. Hung never left her side, not for a second. He held her hand through every wave of pain, wiped her brow, whispered steady words even when his own heart raced with fear. And when the cries filled the room, sharp and pure, everything else vanished. It was a boy. The nurse handed him to Ka, but she looked at Hung. "You take him first," she said. He hesitated, then reached out, cradling the small, warm bundle to his chest. The baby blinked once, yawned, and settled in. Hung felt something break inside him and rebuild stronger. A family. That night, as Ka slept, exhausted but safe, and the baby snored softly beside her, Hung stood by the window and cried for the first time in years, not out of sadness, but relief, joy, fear, hope, all of it, wrapped into one perfect, terrifying, beautiful moment. The days that followed were quiet, peaceful. Visitors came, left gifts, left blessings. Hung's mother came again, held the baby, whispered something only the child could hear. She and Ka spoke more now, shared recipes, shared silence. One afternoon, Hung found them sitting together, knitting. The sight made him smile for hours. The child's name was decided together, not from a book, but from a dream Ka had. She said the name came to her in a voice she didn't recognize. Hung wrote it down, carved it into a small wooden plaque he placed above the crib. Life was not perfect. There were still bad days. CA struggled with recovery sometimes. Hung still had to travel now and then. The baby cried. A lot. But they met it all together. Shoulder to shoulder. Heart to heart. And when spring turned fully into summer, Hung took Ka and the children on a trip. Just a weekend away. By a river. A place with fresh air, tall grass, and no noise. He set up a small tent, cooked over fire, told bedtime stories, and on the last night, under a sky bursting with stars, he turned to Ka and said, "Marry me." She didn't answer right away, only smiled, then whispered, "I thought you'd never ask." And in that quiet place, without fanfare or ceremony, they made a promise, not just to each other, but to the life they had chosen, the family they had built, and the future they would face, together, always.